Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Santos show. Now before we start, we should probably start getting into jamming to the intro music. Side note, I'm not very good at jamming. And it's gonna start right around now. And we're back. Alright, first thing on our agenda is the Libertarian National Committee has recently announced their presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate. Now, for some of you that don't know, the presidential candidates don't pick the running mates. They can simply suggest towards the Libertarian National Committee who they would like. However, the Libertarian National Committee is not necessarily entitled to choose those people. In this instance, however, we as in the Libertarian Party decided to go with Dr. Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen. Spike Cohen is a political activist. He has been pretty vocal, a pretty big voice for liberty in the past years. However, he has come under a bit of scrutiny as being seen as more of a joke candidate, seeing as he was the suggested running mate for Vermin Supreme. A lot of people do know who Vermin Supreme is, but for those who don't know, he's a political activist and political satirist who is most famously depicted for wearing a boot on his head. And yes, I'm very serious about that. For those of you that don't know, he does wear a boot on his head. It is kind of a symbolism to imply that the boot will never be like crushing him in the sense of like the authoritarian government. However, it can be seen as kind of like not taking the race seriously. Joe Jorgensen, however, is a much more respected establishment candidate, well, relatively establishment for libertarians, who has gotten her doctorate from Clemson University, and she actually was a lecturer there for quite a while until she decided to run. Now, I'm very glad that she got the nomination. However, I think the vice presidential nomination should have gone to John Mons, but I'm still more than excited to have Spike Cohen on. And if my podcast were ever to grow, I would love to have him on the show, if I ever could figure that out. Now, there are very good principled candidates for liberty, and if you would like to find out more about their stances and positions, make sure to go to joj2020.com or ourjoeisbetterthanyourjoe.com. Now, that website wasn't purchased. Now, that domain name wasn't purchased by her. However, it was purchased by one of her supporters. Shortly after her nomination, the hashtag #I'mWithHer started to go viral. Some people took it well. Some people took it as an offense. Frankly, she is a her, and if you are with her, you should be allowed to use that hashtag. Now, onto more grave issues. A few days ago, a man named George Floyd was brutally murdered by police in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Most of you probably already know that. What some people fail to understand is that it's really hard to get police out of work. Police unions have a lot of power, and as mentioned previously in the John Oliver episode, it's almost impossible to sue police. And even when it is possible, it's almost impossible to fully charge them on stuff that they should actually be charged for. Now, do I think that this attack was racially motivated? Yes. It's almost impossible to see it any other way. However, do I think it was the sole reason? Absolutely not. Most people, your average everyday racist, hopefully they're not everyday, but your common racist would also dislike African American people or some other racial minority. However, they wouldn't attack them in broad daylight, nor would they kill them, because they know that they would be held accountable for their actions. That's a pretty simple concept to understand. However, police officers who are under the protection of a giant police union and a lot of government rulings have decided that they are not to be held accountable for their actions. And it's true, most of the times they are not held accountable for their actions. So what we do need is a system of accountability and to reduce the power of the police unions. Doing this would, of course, allow the police more accountability, take away their ability to get the records off, to get their previous firings, etc. off the record. Because nowadays, in most police departments, you are allowed to do so. Like, if somebody ever reports you for abusing your power, you can just get that removed after a certain amount of time, and I think that's absolutely terrible, because it incentivizes people to abuse their power. Because I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Oh, they just can't move for 3 years. Big deal relatively. Like, it's not that big a deal relatively, because you still have a pretty well-paying job. So yes, we do need more accountability on police. However, that still is no excuse for looting and destroying places that had nothing to do with the shooting. I mean, not shooting, the attack on George Floyd. It has been shown countless times that doesn't work. Like, even back in Martin Luther King times, whenever they protested the racial discrimination on buses, they just didn't take buses. In the similar vein, that whenever a police officer was abusing his power, they destroyed the police station, which I think, I mean, it's a little harsh, but it's still more than fair. However, rooting and stealing from a Target or from the Dior and Gucci stores in Atlanta, that's definitely taken too far. Now, if we were to talk about other items on the agenda, such as, what was I going to talk about? Oh no. Well, if we were to talk about other policies that have been disproportionately hurting African American communities and other minorities, but predominantly African American communities, we could be talking about ending the war on drugs, the war on terror. That's not really African American, but it still does affect different racial minorities, and the war on poverty. For example, for the African American communities, it is most likely the war on poverty and the war on drugs, because from before, during segregation times, and like post-slavery, but before civil rights movement, so during the whole segregation times, the idea of a minimum wage was implemented, which was explicitly created to disadvantage African American workers, because before the minimum wage was implemented, African Americans actually had a lower unemployment rate than their white counterparts, because it was cheaper to employ them. However, when the concept of a minimum wage came to be, people realized that, well, if you're gonna have to pay them at like X amount of dollars per hour or whatever, most people who were like racist but not dumb, they were like, okay, I don't really like African American folks, but it saves me money. But now it doesn't save you money, so like there was no reason, at least in their eyes, because racism, to hire African American workers. If you'd have to pay the same to get a white worker. Those policies were inherently made to disadvantage African American people. So in order to do that, in order to reverse those damages, we must eliminate the minimum wage and keep working towards a more equitable and free market approach. And the popular adage says, the freer the markets, the freer the people. However, what most people don't realize is that it also goes the other way around. The freer the people, the freer the markets, which is why I also believe we should eliminate the inherently socialistic policy of the border. An open border would be most advantageous to the American people, as it allows people from different nationalities with different skill sets to come in and out of the country and work. Of course, that would also mean some people would just go to, quote unquote, leech on different forms of welfare. However, I do not think that the government should have gotten involved with welfare, because all it does is that it incentivizes the people that don't have a job to start looking. It incentivizes people to not look for a job, because sometimes it's just even more economically advantageous to just keep getting your $800 a month unemployment check, because that's $800 for 0 hours of work. I mean, some people, they literally can't work, and for that I think private charities have and will continue to be a more efficient source of revenue for those people than otherwise. No. And for those reasons, I think it should be more likely that if you are for racial equality, you should be more likely to vote for the Libertarian Party than you are to be for the Republicans or Democrats. because we want equality for all people in all jobs. We want to eliminate certificate of need laws that crush small wannabe, like people who want to start small businesses. Because, like, let's say you want to start a hair salon. Normally you could just open it up and like start cutting people's hair or braiding people's hair, but with certificate of need laws, you have to get certified by a bunch of other hair salons. And 9 times out of 10, those hair salons, they're gonna say, no, we don't need no competition. Or for hospitals too. You want to open a hospital? Like before, you could just open a hospital, hire your doctors, get your machines in place. But now you need to file a certificate of need for an MRI machine, a ventilator, or to open a hospital in general. And most of the people on those boards for certificate of needs are the owners of other hospitals. And you know what people are gonna say if you try to apply something that's like a competition to their business. 9 times out of 10, they're gonna reject it, regardless of the situation. Without certificate of need laws, without much of the FDA's bureaucracy slowing innovation down, and without certificate of need laws as well, we could have much more easily resolved this pandemic crisis as well. Oh boy, we do have a lot of things going on right now. Now, to eliminate the crisis, we could eliminate a few standards of the FDA, because right now they require both safety and efficacy. But we could just say all we need is safety, because as long as it's safe, people should be allowed to take it. You know, if it's efficient, the market will find out which one is the most efficient, like pretty quickly. You know, we have the internet, Yelp and stuff. I mean, I don't think there's a Yelp for like pharmaceutical drugs or stuff, but still. And also, I do believe we should legalize all drugs, because I don't think the government should have any say so in what a legally consenting adult puts into their bodies. A lot of people in less economically advantageous neighborhoods happen to resort to a side hustle, which is something that is done, quote unquote, off the books and tax free. That is a great idea, in my opinion. I do not think that you should have to pay the government for working, which is basically what a tax is. And if you're looking to protest the government, I would suggest a citywide tax fraud. Because it has become. Look, I am a believer in quote unquote all lives matter, because yes, all lives do matter. However, it has become increasingly clear that all lives do not matter equally in the eyes of the law. And if we continue to uphold this, if we continue to believe that all lives do matter, yet the government continues to not do that, then we are not being represented. And if we are not being represented, then we should have no reason to pay taxes, because that would be inherently taxation without representation. Therefore, I believe it is in our best interest to avoid our taxes this year. If the government is not listening to us, then why should we listen to them? Hopefully, I was being coherent in my speech. I think I wandered from topic to topic. Well, this has been Santos at the Santos Show, and I'll see you all later.